Hello and welcome. This is Working Class to World Class. But before we go any further, I do have a little favour of you. If you could hit that follow or subscribe button, then that would be a massive help. Thank you. In this episode, I chat with a famous designer who started off selling stuff in a local stall in London, but made it big when he worked with one of the biggest department stores in America. It is an amazing story, and it's really what dreams are made of. Breaking through the barriers of adversity. I'm Lynn Lester, and this is Working Class to World Class. So Wayne, thank you so much for joining me today. And just to kick us off, for everyone watching, who is Wayne Hemingway?
Well, he's sat here in a very nice second-hand green shirt that I got on eBay, and it was brand new in its packaging. A pair of second-hand shoes, and a charity shop pair of trousers. That's who he is, and he's 61 years old, married with 4 kids and 4 grandkids, and is co-founder of a company called Hemingway Design, and prior to that, part of Hemingway Design was a company called Red or Dead. I run a lot, I like dogs, and I am half First Nation in a background, which in old money is Native American Indian.
So tell me a bit more about that.
Well, basically, my mum met the heavyweight wrestling champion of the world in 1960, called Billy Two Rivers, and she they went to the iconic Midland Hotel in Morecambe. Did what you do, capertled, I think they call it from where I'm from in Lancashire, and I resulted. And then he buggered off when I was 3. Am I allowed to say buggered off?
You can say whatever you like.
Okay, yeah.
Wow. I mean, who then brought you up?
So I was brought up by my mum, my brilliant mum, sadly departed, and my nan and my pop in Morecambe till I was 7, and then moved to Blackburn, which was kind of my formative years were spent in Blackburn, and then came to live in London in 1979. So I've lived in London for 43 years.
That's a good turn. So for your nana and your pop and your mum, what were they like?
Well, very working class, but aspirational at the same time. So proper grafters. So my mum had 3 jobs, worked for the post office, worked as a croupier in a nightclub, and also made clothes, and that's one of the things that happened, was going on in our house all the time, was making. So my mum made, the pictures of my mum are just amazing, of the clothes that she made. Never with an idea to form a business out of it, just to look good going out. She was into what I think are the most important things to be into, especially when you're young, and that's music and fashion. Because Barry Manilow said they're always the passion, didn't he? Yeah. And they were certainly for my family. My nan, Ida, was she sold cigarettes on Morecambe Pier. She was stood going around, kind of sampling cigarettes like you did, because they were healthy for you, weren't they, back then, as it was told. And my pop worked for a construction company. My nan made clothes. My pop was always making the furniture and growing things. Lived in a little small house in Morecambe, and every little space was given up to whether it was growing strawberries, raspberries, potatoes, and so it was that kind of upbringing. There was never the money, but there was things going on it was just you would never have used the word creative, but like my pop made all my toys, which I've passed down now to my grandkids, and so that must have been important to me.
That is so cool. What would you say was your favourite toy out of everything you made?
I think the favourite thing that I've still got is a fort, like an old fort, which he covered in wallpaper, and he made the soldiers out of lead soldiers, which again you wouldn't do nowadays. But we've still got all of those, and that fort is still used by my grandkids, and was used by my kids. So that's the favourite one.
Something you'll never throw away.
Yeah, never. Yeah.
And so for you, when you were growing up, what was your earliest memory, do you think?
I think my earliest memory, and you can never really tell because of photography really, but my earliest memory was certainly Morecambe Promenade, and I remember Scots Week. They had Glasgow Week, which was the main one for Morecambe, because obviously West Coast, the Glaswegians would come down the West Coast, and how exciting Morecambe was. You know, because the factories used to close down, offices used to close down, for those people who don't remember what these towns weeks were, and whole towns would empty out on a certain week or a certain fortnight. My nan used to, at a B&B, and would take in, we lived in a B&B, so my nan would take in, and I always looked forward to Glasgow Week, Glasgow Fortnight, because it was just, there was dancing down the prom, there was music, it was wild, it was loud, you know, and I just remember that was Morecambe at its most exciting. So that's one of the memories of being young, but also just loving living by the seaside, growing up by the seaside, and fishing, and you know, now I don't eat fish and stuff, and all, you know, things that you did, and just you know, just walking with the dog and all of that kind of stuff, and then moving to Blackburn was quite a culture shock really, because moving from the seaside and living literally by the prom to going to an industrial town. But I just grew to love Blackburn. You know, it was certainly a very, very cool place to grow up. You know, Northern Soul was at the heart of it. It had an amazing football club, not quite as amazing right at this time now. And you know, by the time you know, I remember seeing David Bowie in 1972 on the Aladdin Sane tour. So I was 11 years old. That was the first concert that my mum let me go to. I was given real freedom as a kid, because my mum had always been a rebel with a cause, I suppose. The rebel was just going out and dancing, and you know, and you know, not really going on to further education or anything like that. Just and so I was allowed to have great freedom, and I remember just going back even further than that. I can't believe that this happened, especially in this day and age. But I travelled to school on a bus at 3 to 3 and 4 to I remember where it was, Crosscop preschool in Heysham, a part of Morecambe. There was a great trustworthiness about that. I was given trust, and so to be able to, you know, to go and watch concerts at the age of 11. By the age of 13, I was going to Wigan Casino, which were all-nighters. I wasn't the only one at the age of 13. There was a lot between 13, probably more 14 and 15-year-olds. But imagine the trust from you know, to be given that and to stay out all night. But it just really, it was the making of me. But we never had the money, but I was out night clubbing early, but learning how to buy second-hand clothes, to go to army surplus places, and then when punk came along when I was 16, to buy a pair of old army trousers, and because my mum had the sewing machines out all the time, and make them into bondage trousers and all of that kind of stuff. And and at school being, you know, making a tie narrow, and life was all about. I suppose it was all about living to go out, living to go and watch a band, living to go dancing. I got a job working, you know, collecting glasses in a bar at the age of probably 14, no, maybe younger, maybe 13 or 14. So that was giving me the money to go out and buy records, and so life just was all about. I didn't use the word culture. And you know, parallel to that, Geraldine was going through exactly the same life. You know, she left school at 15 with no qualifications, and she left school so she could earn some money. You know, she went to work as a trainee wages clerk, so she could earn some money to buy fabric from Blackburn Market, to make clothes, to go out. And we naturally then met in a disco. You know, we met young in a disco, because that's what we did. And that obviously then, that background. We had the training to be fashion designers, because we'd spent all those years clubbing and living and dressing up and in an environment where everybody could, you know, because that time people didn't dress down, they dressed up. So being surrounded by people who were all living, living to go out, and it was there. The eye candy was. So when we came to London, it was kind of almost natural. We'd never, from my background, I'd never thought that you could make a living out of, I'd never heard of the word creative industries, never heard of the word that you could be a designer. There was no, just why would we know that? The idea from my background was that you went to work for M&S and hopefully you worked your way up, from the shop floor to being a buyer or something like that. But the idea that you could be a designer was just out the question. But we effectively were designers from a very young age.
So when did you realise you could make some money from it?
Well, it was definitely, so when I came to London in '79, the first thing I did is stick a post-it up on the wall of the Dublin Castle in Camden to form a band, and so formed a band at 18 and literally after being in London weeks. But being in a band cost money, rehearsals, buying equipment and all of that, and just decided that I needed some money, so I'd sell what was in my wardrobe. My old punk clothes, punk had been gone for me 2 years by then, but I still had all the leather jackets, the bondage trousers. I'd been buying second-hand clothes, from charity shops, mainly from jumble sales, really, and army surplus stuff for years. I'd brought it all down to London with me, realised I wasn't wearing it anymore because fashion was starting to move on to new romantic and a lot more, a lot brighter than what had happened, that kind of punk and post-punk look that was so important. And the Northern Soul look, it was all very doer, but that was changing a lot in London. When I came to London, everything felt, new romantic was starting really in 79. And so I decided I could sell all of that, and I think it was Geraldine that found out in Time Out there was this Camden Market was just starting, this bit of Buck Street Market, which is part of Camden Market, and it was £6. We went there, we took 300 quid over the weekend and never looked back. From then on, I just spent every spare second that I could going to second-hand shops, jumble sales. We obviously had the eye for it. We ended up with 16 stalls on Camden. We'd travel up during the week to Dewsbury, where all these things called Mungo and Shoddy yards were, buying up. We were the only ones buying up, going into these prototype recycling. They were recycling yards, but they were called Mungo and Shoddy. That's where the word shoddy clothing comes from. And we would leave examples of what we want with all of these ladies sat on conveyor belts, and they would save it all for us, and we'd pay them. They'd really look forward to us coming because we were enhancing their weight. They were like tips for saving stuff. But we'd also pay the rag yard, the shoddy yard owner more to weigh the stuff than he would get for using the clothing as wiping cloths or sending it to Africa or wherever it went. So it was a win-win for everybody. We were filling 2 trucks a week of it. Parallel to that, Geraldine opened in Kensington Market, making clothes, didn't put a label in it. The wonderful story is that she'd only been in there a number of weeks, and I got this phone call from this very excited young woman, Geraldine, that she'd got a first wholesale order. And I said, well, that's fantastic. Who's ordered? She said, well, they've ordered 200 of each. She only had 8 stars. And I said, what? I said, you can only make 2 or 3 items on a quiet day, because she'd sit there with a sewing machine in Kensington Market. The side story is Kensington Market was this hotbed of stuff going on. With Boy George was in there, Zig Zig, Sputnik. It was a place where anybody with an idea could go for £10 a week, for £10 a week, and it was just the coolest place to shop in London. Anyway, lo and behold, she said, I've never heard of this company, but they're called Macy's New York. Well, I'd never travelled out of, I think I'd been to Benidorm with my mates from school, and she'd only been to Torremolinos with her mates, I think. We'd never travelled, certainly never been to New York. So we didn't know who Macy's were. We found out that London Fashion Week was taking place down the road at Olympia, and they must have wandered up into Kenny Market, spotted Geraldine's stuff. So very quickly we had to make that. My mum left her job working behind the bar of the halfway house between Blackburn and Preston. One of Geraldine's sisters left her job. We got people. My mum rented this place in Rowley Mills in Blackburn. The money that we were taking on the market was used to buy overlocking machines, you know, it was a dream come true for my mum, who'd always wanted, you know, to have a business and wanted, you know, her only son to be a millionaire, you know, and she just dropped everything, threw herself into it. Geraldine's family threw themselves into it. Friends threw themselves into it. People Geraldine used to buy fabric from on Blackburn Market started to help out and source fabric and all of that. And we ended up with this community of people making the clothing. We came up with the label Red or Dead after a while. And the rest is history. Red or Dead went on, we delivered that order to Macy's. Red or Dead went on to become Designer of the Year 3 years on a row. We ended up with 23 shops from Tokyo to Reykjavik, even to Copenhagen, and shops all around the UK. From one of our favourite ones was on Buchanan Street in Glasgow, and we ended up like 25 million turnover, 300 odd staff, and never borrowed a penny, never did a business plan, never looked at anybody's CV, never employed any. We just employed people who were our nightclubbing mates and people who had similar values to us. We were political, we were hard-hitting. The more we talked about, the more we you know, our partners were things like Greenpeace. The more we realised, the more we were true to ourselves and our background, the bigger following, and we just became probably the brand of working class nightclubbers in Britain, really, and then we ended up selling it 17 years after we started it, 18 years after we started it, and concentrated on all the stuff that we do at Hemingway Design.
Wow, what a story. All your Christmases came at once, literally.
Yeah, I mean, 18 years is a long time. You know, that's a lifetime in a way of having a business. So, I mean, I've just told it in, 5 minutes? But you know, and all the things that happened during that were phenomenal. You know, the stories that we could do a series on Red or Dead. To do that without any training, without any bank backing, without any investors, to open all around the world with no training and not bringing anybody else who ever had any experience, all of us learning on the job, and succeeding, and all the stories that we had to do, just things like, you know, I talked to the kids about it. I remember, like, with companies in America going what was called Chapter 13 on us, I think, where they go to semi-bankruptcy, and me going over there to collect cash off them because we couldn't get money out of them, and they said, well, we want to keep buying your stuff, but we're in Chapter 11, I think it's called. It's this kind of American semi-bankruptcy thing where they can still operate, but they can't transfer money. So they owed us loads of money. I remember this company in 8th Street in New York, and they owed us loads of money, and they said, right, well, we want to get ourselves out of semi-bankruptcy. We want to keep buying off you, but the only way we can pay you is cash. So I would travel over, and I remember going out to collecting thousands and thousands of dollars and going out dancing at the Danceterium and the factory in New York with this money tucked down my underpants. The stories that happen when you're young and you're doing business in this kind of really unorthodox way, but it was working. It's just phenomenal, really.
Wow. And if you go back to that day in the market where you got the Macy's order, was that luck?
Well, you have to be in the right time. You know, it takes some guts to be that young and to put yourself out there. You know, that took guts from Geraldine to be somebody who has not been through any system, to come from a family of 5 girls living in a 2 up, 2 down, to say, I'm good enough to put myself in front of all you people in London. So yes, there's luck that they walked in there, but she could have chosen not to have ever been there, and then so she allowed luck to happen, you know, and we've done that all our lives. We've never been fearful of trying things and just not been, failure's crap, but you fail a lot, you know, in things, but you learn so much from it and you become resilient. And I think Yeah, we've been in the right place at the right time so many times, and that's luck. But we had to be there in the first place, for these things to happen.
I think that's a really good point. There's luck and there's luck, but you were there, and that's why it happened.
Yeah, I mean, I class myself as very lucky to have attended a David Bowie concert in 1972, and what that did for me, that's. I remember the next day seeing the Lancashire Evening Telegraph, Blackburn Evening Telegraph as it was called back then, and there was a call to ban David Bowie from Blackburn because he basically he'd done the concert to them semi-naked. He did it in like a sumo wrestler's big pair of white kind of underpant things and all his body white, makeup up and everything. And that was classed as immoral, and so what he wasn't showing any parts. It was not. But back then, I immediately then thought I want to be like him. So I went out. I dyed my hair the next day. I went and bought clothes to be as close as to him as possible. Went out and bought his record. So that was being very young and understanding the importance of David Bowie. Yes, that was lucky, and it completely influenced so much of my next few years. But I went to the concert. I put myself in the position that and I must have, how did I know about that at 11? Yes, my mum talked about David Bowie, but I showed an interest. So you do make your own luck.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could have, some 11-year-olds might have sat at home and just watch telly or something, but I never ever sat and watched telly. I just didn't.
And do you think it's a working class background that gives you that kind of hustle to go out there, put yourself out there, go to the market, go to the concert?
Yeah, I think it's that desire to better myself, and my family always had that, and it still drives me today. It's like, but it's also an element of that, a DIY thing that the family had, and that you just got to get on and do things and be busy, and I'm still like that today, and so I think it's really helped, but it doesn't matter what class you are, whether yes, I can genuinely say my family was a working class family, but it's what they did. If they'd have been posh, but they'd bestowed on me a DIY aesthetic and the idea that you keep busy and you do things and you try things, it doesn't matter, because if I'd have come from a working class family that just said just sit there and watch telly all day and let's do nothing, let's just let the world pass by, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, and I wouldn't have had the stimulating life that I had and continue to have. So I don't think it's necessarily to do with class. It's to do with attitude, and you can still have the attitude that I've got, and I could have come from money. I think I've met loads of moneyed people who are good.
And do you think in your mind right now, do you consider yourself working class?
Well, I've come from a working class background and I work, but I've got money, so I don't know. But I still vote the same, and I've got the values that I had, that my family values are the same as my parents and my grandparents, roughly. But I'd be wrong to say I was working class when I've got a couple of houses and lots of money in the bank and pension funds and stuff, so I don't know.
So you touched on one of your values, which is the DIY part. What other values did your family bestow on you?
Well, I think family values and decency, and the idea. My mum always used to say that our job on this earth is to leave this earth a better place than you found it, and that was always caring for other people, it's just really important stuff. And my mum also I think all my family have always cared a lot about the environment and about health without, when I grew up, I'm 61 years old, there's no way would your mum and your nan and your pop talk about sustainability and environment, those things, but they clearly cared about it, because just the way that they went about their lives, it was probably just as much thrift and lack and not wasting things. And so, for example, no paper was ever allowed to be just thrown in a bin. We weren't allowed to throw anything in a bin. The paper had to be shredded to put round the strawberries, to keep the frost off the strawberries. I remember my nan she did go on holidays, and she'd always bring back, and it could look quite sad really, but she'd always bring back the soaps and the plastic hair things that you put on to the shower caps are called, aren't they? And so to this day, with the shower caps, she was the one that took those shower caps and used them on top of dishes to keep food fresh. So everything was about what else. How could you use something that was around you to the food scraps? Oh my God! You were just not allowed to waste food. There was so much trouble if you did waste food, and everything went into a stew, and I think that that kind of, they were from Yorkshire, I was born in, like that kind of northern attitude towards not wasting things has been really important. And to this day, and whether it's the right thing to do, I don't like staying in a hotel that has that doesn't have the shower caps and the soap to bring back, because I want to reuse them. And it's just, you'll see that in our kitchen cupboard there's a pile of, try not to buy anything like cling film, but try to make sure that we're using shower caps, because you can wash them and they last, it's like using cling film. I suppose it is plastic, which we shouldn't be doing, but at least you can keep using those shower caps for a good 6 months.
So tell me, did you steal the slippers then from the rooms?
Now that's a thing. That's an illness I've got. I have to take the slippers, and I do tend to stay in some hotels that have those slippers. And we've got a big box of those slippers, because one day the idea is that we have a party and everybody wears those slippers, or I do an artwork from them. I've got all sorts of things that I collect because they're free, and I think that's partly because when you're from a poor family, everything that is free you take. I mean, in this interview, I'm disappointed that there isn't like a box of biscuits or something, because those I would say, oh, can I take a packet for the tube on the way back? I'm forever. You have to have things that are free.
You've never forgotten where you came from, clearly.
Like if you're lucky enough to stay in a hotel with a buffet, with a breakfast buffet, and they have the Alpens and the little Nutella things, you have to take a few of them, don't you? Because why would you buy a jar of Nutella when you could take it from a hotel? But is that stealing? That's probably a worry as well, isn't it?
Yeah, we could argue the toss, but I think you're fine. I think you're good. I think you've paid for it up front.
Okay.
And so do you teach that in your own children now?
Yeah, to an extent, and yeah, but some of them can't go as far as me because I am extreme, so they get a bit embarrassed. It's like, Dad, put it down. Well, not nowadays because they're grown up, but I remember when they were young, Dad, don't take 6 of them. Put 1, just put the rest back, And so that was when it was a Nutella. They liked the idea that they could dip their fingers in Nutella in the car or something after we'd left a hotel, but they wouldn't want me to take 6 of them. So there's a compromise. They've kind of calmed me down a little bit.
What's been your best steal or takeaway?
Best takeaway? I think it used to be on Virgin, when Virgin were on the west coast on the trains, and used to travel up a lot to Scotland and up and down the west coast, and they had these things called uglies. They were little biscuits, and we designed the Virgin uniform and designed a few things for Virgin, so we got a first class pass and we were allowed in the first class lounges. They should never let us do that because they had these uglies, and I used to take a little plastic bag and fill it with them. And I found one in the, Virgin have not been around for a while now, and I found one in the freezer the other day. One lone frozen chocolate ugly, and it was very exciting.
What a win.
Yeah.
So when you look at yourself now, what advice would Wayne today give Wayne when he was a young boy?
I'd just say do it all again and appreciate it. I think there's a lot of things in, but that's a human trait, isn't it? I mean, there are so many things that I didn't appreciate, how good, what a time I was having. You know, I was just thinking, I think back to, I do this Mixcloud every Thursday, so I've got a big record collection, I've got 17,000 records I've been collecting since I've been 11 years old. And I did one last year about the Beetroot, a club, a very small club in London. And just, you play that, you listen to that music, and I knew it was a good club at the time, but I just didn't realise, and I can picture now the guys from Spandau Ballet there, Boy George on the door, George Michael in there, Sade going out with Robert Elms at the time, and all of us in this club, you know, which only held 150 people. But I didn't appreciate it, and I would love to, I'd give so much to go back and have a dance in that club again. And I think we all we sometimes take things that are amazing for granted, especially when you're young. And I just wish I could, and I wish I'd taken more pictures. I wish I'd, you know, obviously we didn't have phones then, didn't have mobile phones to take pictures on, and just, yeah, and it's like, you know, the times travelling with the kids when we were young, and there's just so many things that you'd look back on and wish you'd just cherished it more, because when you get, you know, older, and you know, I've got my senior rail pass now, and I travel on the tubes for free. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, you can't go back, you know, and you sometimes just wish, but then again, you regrets what, you know, you can't have them, can you? You know.
You wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, and I can't ever say I wasted time. No, that's a good thing. I can't say I wish I'd not sat watching telly, because I've never done that, and I can't. You know, I can't say I wish I'd slept less, because I've never slept for more than 6 hours, ever. And I can't say I wish I'd not had hangovers, because I haven't drunk since the eldest lad was, so I haven't drunk now I've had a sip of alcohol since he was 4, so he's 36, 32 years. So there's not many things, I can't say I've wasted my life in any way.
What's been the single thing that you're most proud of?
Well, I think it has to be having kids and being close to them. I mean, when you're and enjoying the grandkids, and you know, just, you know, last night 2 grandkids staying over, and the youngest, neat little Neve, asking Grandad, can Grandad be the one that puts her to bed, and you know, it's lovely. I mean, you know, and you know, I always wish I had more time, but the business is still very busy. But you know, I see my grandkids 4 times a week. You know, that's the thing I'm most proud of. You know, and to have a relationship with them, and to be able to go and watch them play football and do their stuff. That's, yeah.
And if your mum and your nana and your pops were here right now, what do you think they would say to you?
Well, that's the thing. My mum smoked a lot, you know, like a lot of that generation did, till she smoked 40 a day until she was probably late 40s, 50, and but, you know, so she died of lung cancer, as did Geraldine's dad, and so my mum could still be here, you know. She had, like I had kids young. She had me very young, so she would be here. And the thing that she'd be most excited about would be, she always loved seeing me on telly. She loved going to the Red Dead catwalk shows. You know, that was her and my aunties and Geraldine's mum. The biggest thing for them was the glamour of that. We were never seduced by the glamour. It was kind of, we didn't actually like the catwalk shows, but they were a necessity because they were the things that gave you the oomph in terms of the marketing oomph. But like in a few weeks, it's we're curating a big section of the Platinum pageant. The Queen on the Mall. We're curating the history of youth culture. It's quite an amazing thing, really. A cast of 2,000 people, and she, what would she love now? Well, she'd love to be. We'd get her a seat on the Mall. She'd love that, and she'd love the grandchildren, and she'd love seeing my kids, their kids, and she'd just be. That's my regret, that she's not here to enjoy that.
So what were you like at school?
Well, I was lucky enough to go to a fucking amazing secondary school, and I was I was lucky that Blackburn Council paid for 2 people every year who were means tested. So if you didn't have enough money to go to Queen Elizabeth Grammar School, which was a paid school in Blackburn, 2 people were. If you took an exam, you took an 11 plus. And 2 people, as long as they were from below a certain financial threshold, got in, and I was one of them to get in. The school was unbelievable. It taught me so much. It gave you freedom. So I was sparky at school, as you would imagine. I would break all the rules, especially when it came to dress. But it had a big emphasis on things outside of academia, and so. Sport, which I've always loved sport. I ran my first marathon at 18. I've run a marathon in every decade of my life. I run 70 miles a week, apart from got a couple of injuries at the moment. I've always loved football, cricket, and so it allowed me to do that, and that gave me a lot of confidence because I was good at it, and I was probably better at that than I was academic when I was young. But then, for some reason, because I was given this freedom, they knew I was out clubbing all the time. They knew that I came to school tired out sometimes, because if I'd been to an all-dayer or an all-nighter on a Saturday and an all-dayer on a Sunday at the Ritz in Manchester, thinking coming to school after being, hedonistic all weekend, and I'd be sleepy. I'd fall asleep in class, but they just gave me latitude, and in the end, I got fantastic results. At school, and just loved every minute of it. It was just a hoot. So I was a bit naughty and sparky, but nothing that was for the sake of it, just for me.
Yeah, leading your life. And when you were a child, you talked about how you had so much autonomy from a really, really young age. Do you think that is partly why you're successful today?
Yeah, I was allowed to get on with things, and that even when my mum would go on holiday and leave me, with 2 German shepherds, Alsatians as they were called back then, she was going on holiday. How old was I? Looking after the dogs, 13. Certainly below the legal age of what you're supposed to be left, but I was trustworthy. So, and I think, I've never done anything. When somebody gives you that trust and you love them, you don't break it, do you? So.
And where do you think you'll be? If you look at your life, where are you going to be in the next 5 years?
Well, in 5 years, I'll be 66 in 5 years, and whilst I've got the energy. And I really love Hemingway design and everything that we do, the projects from urban design through to brand, through to placemaking, through to all the events that are put on all around the UK. I do know that most of our ideas come now from the younger elements of the team. And so what I'd like to be is just be there as a voice of experience who can be called on. Rather than the person who's being interviewed, still at the moment because of my background and my mouth and the telly I've been on in the past. Hemingway design the press all want to talk about me, but it's not me. that's the thing. It's not me that's doing it. It's it's full of Hemingway design. The events that we do all around the UK, and they're amazingly massive events. There's a 24-year-old who basically is in charge of that. All the brand work that we do, all of the urban design. It's a combination of Jack and Tilly, who are partners, and Beck, who are partners. Some of my kids who are partners in it, but also a team of 22, 23 to 30-year-olds, and so I'd like to just be there to say, well, actually, try it this way, and just let them get on with it really, and take it in. They're taking it in the direction that it's going now. The business, is all about social benefit, and that's coming from a generation who are much more socially aware than my generation. This generation, my generation, has got the world into a pretty precarious position in many respects. But there's a new generation who are trying their best and starting to right the ship. I think that's the phrase, to steady the ship. And so they've got to be the ones in 5 years who are completely taking Hemingway design forward, and I've got to be there to say, yeah, good on you, pat them on the back occasionally and say, carry on.
And kick them up the butt if you get it wrong.
No, they've got to get it wrong. They've got to get it wrong to get things right, haven't you?
Absolutely. And I have to ask before I let you go, so a few times you've talked about being sparky and you've talked about your mouth. What is the most outrageous thing you've ever said publicly?
When I look back at occasionally, people show me things from when I was in my 30s and my 40s and were doing a lot of television. So I was like on the Ricky Gervais show, and me and Ricky, oh my God, we were so un-PC. It's like, whoa, and especially my daughters show me, Dad, did you ever say that? And then I did this series for Channel 4 called The Art Show, and we did one programme called Three curries and a posh meal or something. But look it up. It's on YouTube, or it's somewhere on YouTube. And 3 curries and a. Oh, anyway, look it up, and it's part of the channel. Type in Wayne Hemingway, Channel 4 Art Show, 3 curries or something, and the opening sequence and the closing sequence of that. I think, God Almighty, you were behind that. That is so risque. And I don't think it would be on television nowadays. I don't think they get away with it, and certainly I wouldn't dare do it. So I was much more daring and, un-PC when I was younger. But now I've got, kids who have kind of would not allow me to do that, and I wouldn't want to, because it was just like, well, it was a different time.
Okay, well, I'm not going to ask you what it is. I'm going to leave it on that note. I'm about to go off and do my research, but just thank you so much, Wayne, for being part of this. I think it's fair to say you've inspired millions of people, and just keep being you, because you're absolutely awesome.
All right, cheers.